The roar of the crowd had barely faded when the dust finally settled over the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament arena. Ribbons of golden light still hung in the evening sky, and the smell of sweat, earth, and something electric, something that could only be described as raw power, lingered over the stadium like a memory refusing to leave. The world had been saved. Again. And this time, the hero responsible stood alone at the edge of the arena, staring at the horizon with those same wide, innocent eyes that had never once learned to look at the world with anything other than pure wonder. Son Goku. He was barely 18, but the body that stood there belonged to someone who had walked through fire, traded blows with demons, and stared death in the face without flinching. His gi was torn at the shoulder, a thin line of dried blood tracing his jawline from an earlier exchange. And yet, he was smiling. Not the smile of a man who had conquered something, the smile of someone who was simply, genuinely happy to be alive. Behind him, the celebration was already erupting. Krillin was screaming loud enough to wake the next province over. Master Roshi had somehow acquired 3 different women on each arm. Tien stood apart, arms folded, offering a single respectful nod. Even Piccolo, lurking at the outermost edge of the crowd, seemed to carry a fractionally lighter tension in his jaw. But Goku wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about a conversation he still needed to have. Chi-Chi found him near the outer wall of the arena, away from the noise. She was still wearing her fighting helmet, though she had removed the faceplate. Her dark eyes were bright with anticipation, her fingers clasped together in front of her with the restrained energy of someone who had been waiting years for this exact moment. Chi-Chi said, and the single word carried the weight of an entire childhood. He turned to face her, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The wind moved between them, tugging at the frayed ends of his orange gi. "Chi-Chi," he said carefully, "I need to tell you something about that promise I made when we were kids." Her expression shifted, something hopeful flickering behind her eyes. "You remembered?" "I remembered," he confirmed, "but I also finally understand what it meant." He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck in that way he always did when he knew he was about to say something that was going to land hard. "When you asked me to be your groom, I thought bride was a kind of food. I said yes because I was hungry, and you seemed serious about it. I was 8. The flicker in Chi-Chi's eyes dimmed. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was completely, devastatingly sincere. "Not for saying yes back then. I'm sorry because you carried that for all these years, and I had no idea what I was carrying with you. You deserved better than that." Chi-Chi was very still, then her jaw tightened. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I care about you. I think you're strong and brave and incredible. But what you want, a home, a family, a husband who dreams about you, I can't give that to you honestly." His eyes met hers without wavering. "And you deserve honesty more than you deserve a promise made by a boy who thought marriage was a meal." For 3 full seconds, Chi-Chi said nothing. Then she grabbed the nearest broom from a passing stadium attendant and swung it directly at his head. Goku ducked, a pure reflex, and straightened to find her standing there with tears cutting clean lines down her face, the broom trembling in her grip. Something cracked behind her expression. The armor she had been building around this dream for a decade developed a fracture, and then, slowly, gave way entirely.
She lowered the broom. "You really are impossible," she whispered, but there was no venom left in it, only something tired, and beneath that, something almost relieved. "All these years I imagined what this conversation would sound like. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I didn't imagine it would be honest. I didn't know how to be dishonest about something like this, Goku said simply. Chi-Chi looked at him for a long moment. Then she straightened, smoothed her dress, and extended her hand. Friends, then. Real ones. Goku took her hand immediately and shook it with genuine warmth. Real ones. She walked away with her head high, and Goku watched her go with quiet respect. Then he turned, scanned the horizon one more time, and made a decision. Capsule Corporation came into view just as the last light of evening dissolved into deep blue. The compound was exactly how he remembered it, impossibly large, lit from within by the cool white glow of technology that felt like it belonged in a different century. Automated turrets tracked his approach, beeped in recognition, and returned to standby. He landed in the courtyard just as a set of exterior lights clicked on, and the smell that hit him, roasted meat, garlic, something rich and slow-cooked, nearly knocked him sideways. He had made the right call. Is someone out there eating that entire roast by themselves? The voice came from a terrace above him, bright and imperious, and unmistakably Bulma. She appeared at the railing a moment later, leaning over it with a half-eaten piece of meat in one hand and a crystal glass of something sparkling in the other. She was wearing a sleek off-shoulder top, her teal hair pinned up in a loose arrangement that framed a face that had grown in the years since their Dragon Ball adventures into something Goku didn't quite have a word for yet. "This is really good," he said, already halfway through the piece he had picked off the serving table below her. "Goku," she stared at him, "do not talk with your mouth full. I didn't raise you." "Sorry, but it's genuinely incredible. You have the best food." She descended the side staircase with the practiced ease of someone who had grown up in a house large enough to require staircases as a daily activity. Up close, the years looked good on her. She had grown tall, carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who had never once doubted that the room belonged to her, and she was right. Every room she walked into did. "You know," she said, tilting her head and studying him in a way that felt slightly clinical, "everyone keeps saying you grew up into this huge, handsome thing." Goku blinked. "Handsome" keeps coming up. Krillin said it. That woman near the arena said it. He considered this. "Does it mean I look like a strong fighter now?" Bulma stared at him for a beat. Then she started laughing, a real laugh, not her performative one, the kind that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "It means you are very, very nice to look at, Goku. And yes, you also look like someone who could fold a tank in half." "Oh," he seemed satisfied with this. "You look different too, Bulma. You don't yell at me as much." "That's because you're not doing as many genuinely stupid things. Showing up at my door unannounced after 3 years is a little stupid." "I had nowhere else to go," he said, and something in his tone made the lightness in her expression soften slightly. "Master Roshi's island is too small now. Kami's lookout is peaceful, but it's too quiet. And you have the best food." "Flattery," she said, pointing at him with her glass, "will get you absolutely nowhere." But she was already pulling out a chair for him at the terrace table. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm neither of them had planned for, and neither of them questioned. Bulma had recently ended things with Yamcha, not with drama, or rather with exactly as much drama as Yamcha had earned. She had come home early from a conference in West City to find him leaning entirely too close to her lab assistant, his hand resting on the counter beside her in a way that had nothing to do with work. She had stood in the doorway for 3 full seconds. Then she had placed her keycard on the table, turned around, and driven herself to the nearest restaurant, where she ate an entire dessert menu alone and decided she was finished. She didn't cry until she got home, and then she cried properly, thoroughly, and with the full commitment she brought to everything. Goku had been in the East Wing training room when she came in, eyes red, posture too controlled.
He had been on his way to the kitchen for his fourth meal of the day and nearly walked into her. "Yamcha?" he asked. She blinked. "How did you—" "You get a wrinkle right here." He tapped the space between his own eyebrows. "Only when it's him. Did he steal your inventions?" Despite everything, she almost smiled. "He stole my patience and my trust, and 3 years I'm not getting back." She sank into the nearest chair. "I broke up with him." "Good." The bluntness of it startled her. "Good? Goku, my heart is broken." "Why would you want to keep someone around who keeps breaking it?" He settled onto the floor across from her with the natural ease of someone who treated every surface as equally valid furniture. "You're my best friend, Bulma. You should be with someone who makes you want to eat and laugh and build things, not someone who makes you look like that." She looked at him for a long moment. In the harsh light of the lab corridor, his face was open and direct and absolutely without guile. He meant every word exactly as he said it. "Love is more complicated than that," she said quietly. "Is it supposed to be?" "Yes, it's supposed to be trust, partnership, feeling like you are the single most important thing in someone's world." Goku considered this with the same focused attention he gave to learning a new technique. Then he nodded slowly, as though filing it under something important. "Then yeah, it should definitely be complicated, but the right kind of complicated." She looked away first. 6 months carved themselves quietly into the walls of Capsule Corporation. Goku trained with a ferocity that impressed even Bulma's most advanced gravity equipment. He pushed the chambers to their limits, then designed new ones with her, standing over blueprints with grease on his hands and ideas that no conventional physics textbook would have endorsed. The machines groaned, the readings spiked, and every evening, without fail, the heavy reinforced door would open, and Goku would walk out with sweat drying on his skin and that particular expression of deep satisfaction that only appeared when a man had pushed himself exactly as far as his body would allow. Bulma had made a personal policy of not looking directly at him when he emerged from training sessions. She was not always successful. "You've been in there since dawn," she said, not looking up from her workstation. "Take a break." "One more set."
"If you don't come out right now, I am feeding your dinner to the stray dogs that live near the east gate." A pause. The sound of machinery winding down. The door opened. He came out with a towel around his neck, hair damp, every muscle in his upper body visible and completely unapologetic about it. He caught the water bottle she held out without making eye contact because she had already turned back to her console. "You're the best, Bulma." "I know. Sit down before you fall down." He sat on the bench beside her station, drinking deeply, and she watched him in her peripheral vision with the particular focused attention of someone who was absolutely not watching. 6 months. 6 months of this, of evenings and meals that ran longer than either of them intended. 6 months of waking up and finding his energy already blazing somewhere in the compound like a second sun that the building had simply decided to accommodate. She set her stylus down. "Has it really been 6 months?" he asked, looking up at the skylight above them where the first stars were appearing. "Almost exactly. Time moves differently when the gravity's good." "Is that the only reason you've stayed?" He turned to look at her. She kept her eyes on the screen. "No," he said, not quickly, thoughtfully. "The food is part of it." She made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "But it's not just the food." He set the water bottle down on the bench beside him, and when he spoke again, his voice had shifted into that quieter register that she had come to recognize as Goku actually thinking. "We've known each other since I was a kid in a forest who didn't understand what a city was. You almost ran me over with a car. That was our introduction. Your skull dented my bumper. And instead of leaving, you stayed. You showed me a world I didn't know existed." He was quiet for a moment. I never really thought about how much that shaped everything. If you hadn't been there, I'd have stayed in that forest. I wouldn't know Krillin or Roshi or any of it. You would have figured it out eventually. You always do. Maybe, but it wouldn't have been the same. He looked at her directly now, and she felt it even without turning. You were always there, Bulma. Even when you were scared. Even during the Red Ribbon Army, Pilaf, Piccolo Daimao, you were there. And lately, every time I think about what it would look like if you weren't here, I get this. He pressed a hand briefly to his sternum. Tightness, right here. It's not a training injury. The console in front of her blurred very slightly. Goku, when I sit with you, everything goes quiet inside. Not empty quiet. The kind of quiet that means something is exactly right. He tilted his head, and she could feel his sincerity from across the bench like warmth. I didn't know feelings had a sound before, but that's what yours is. Quiet. Good quiet. Bulma finally turned to look at him. He was watching her with those enormous dark eyes, the same eyes she had known since she was 16 years old, standing in a forest clearing with a dragon radar and absolutely no idea what the next decade of her life was going to look like. The boy inside those eyes had grown into this ridiculous, beautiful, impossibly earnest man who could crack the earth with a single key blast and still managed to be the most honest person she had ever met. You idiot, she said softly, and her voice broke slightly on the word. Did I say something wrong? No. She reached out and took his hands. His were enormous against hers, calloused and warm, and carrying the particular texture of someone who built their strength one impossible day at a time. You said everything exactly right. That's the problem with you, Goku. You always say things exactly right without even trying.
He looked at their joined hands with the focused attention of someone processing something entirely new. Is this? Yes, this is that complicated thing. She smiled, and the brightness of it after months of subdued grief was almost startling. And before you ask, yes, it counts. What you're feeling counts. It's real. He turned her words over carefully, then looked up. His expression was the same one he wore at the start of a fight he genuinely respected. Serious, present, entirely committed. Then I want to do this correctly. You told me love is a choice made on purpose, not a promise made by accident. I did say that. Then I'm choosing on purpose. He straightened slightly, not breaking eye contact. Bulma, I want you to be my partner. In everything, in training, in food, in building things, in sitting in quiet, and whatever comes after that. I want to learn what this is, the complicated kind, with you specifically. He paused. Is that what asking looks like? For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of Capsule Corporation's systems cycling through their nightly routines, and somewhere outside, the distant chorus of city noise drifting over the compound walls. Then, Bulma Briffs, genius, inventor, the woman who had built a dragon radar at the age of 16 and once negotiated a ceasefire between herself and an alien warlord through sheer force of personality, burst into tears. The happy kind, entirely the happy kind. That, she managed, is exactly what asking looks like. The news moved through their circle the way significant news always does, in waves, each one slightly larger and more chaotic than the last. Krillin's reaction involved falling off a chair. Master Roshi required a cold compress. Tien stood very still for several seconds and then said, "Well," in a tone that contained an entire paragraph. Even Piccolo, when the information eventually reached him through channels he would never specify, was reportedly silent for an unusually long time before producing a single sound that those present would later describe as something almost resembling acknowledgement. Dr. Briffs, for his part, shook Goku's hand and immediately began designing a larger gravity chamber. Mrs. Briffs cried, hugged them both simultaneously, and started planning something that sounded extremely elaborate.
And Goku, who had once thought marriage was a food, who had grown up alone in a forest and learned what the world was from a blue-haired girl with a dragon radar and a temper that could rival a thunderstorm, stood in the Capsule Corporation courtyard in the early morning quiet, felt the familiar stillness settle through his chest, and understood for the first time that the adventure he had been born for was not in any tournament bracket or on any battlefield. It was this, right here. The sun was rising over West City, painting the sky in gradients of gold and rose and the particular shade of early morning blue that belongs only to days that are beginning something real. Bulma Briffs appeared beside him, warm mug in hand, shoulder pressing lightly against his arm. She didn't say anything, neither did he. The quiet said everything. And so, beneath a sky full of possibility, the greatest fighter in the world stood beside the greatest mind in the world, and for the first time in either of their lives, neither one of them was looking for anything else. The Dragon Balls started their story. Something far better was about to continue it.